Hello, welcome back to Laser Cut and Fly RC Models. I'm the laser model guy. What I want to do in today's video is I want to carry on and finish off the rest of the parts for the plane that we're designing ourselves, the Dixie. So with that in mind, today I'm going to talk a little bit around the size and how we plan out our tail plane and our fin, or if you like, our horizontal and our vertical stabilizers, and I'm going to design those on Lightburn, and we're going to work out all the components and put it all together ready for us to cut it out so that we can build our plane. Let's go. Okay, so we're going to start building the tail plane, or the rear stabilizers. So the tail plane would be the horizontal stabilizer, and the fin and the rudder would be the vertical stabilizer. The way to calculate the size and positioning of the tail plane would be using mathematical calculations such as total volume coefficient for the tail plane, etc, etc. But we're not going to do that because we've followed simple rules for the aeroplane, for the fuselage and for the wing. We're going to carry on doing that and use simple rules for the tail plane and the fin and rudder. So the tail plane should be somewhere between 20 to 25% of the surface area of the main plane. So whatever the wing would be, then the tail plane needs to be 20 to 25% of that generally, depending on the length of the fuselage, etc. But like I say, because we've gone with simple rules, we're going to maintain those simple rules and carry on in that vein. So the fin and rudder, or the vertical stabilizer, needs to be 10 to 15% of the surface area of the wing. So looking at now again at the tail plane, or the horizontal stabilizer, there is another rule, and that rule is a general rule of thumb which says it's easy to make a tail plane too small. It's hard to make a tail plane too large. So I'm not over concerned if we're a little bit on the big side. What I would be concerned about is if we're a bit on the small side, because then we wouldn't be able to maintain level flight. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with 25% of the wing, which is the top end of our rule of thumb allowance. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to shape the wing as well, so it will become a little bit narrower at the wing tips, etc. So I'm going to go with the top end, and then we'll have a little bit to play with. So if I just make a nice shape, or a rectangle, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to just work with one side of the tail plane at the moment, because then I'm going to copy it and flip it, and we'll attach those together. The whole wingspan is 1000 by 150, which would give us 150,000 square millimeters. So 25% of that is 37,500 square millimeters. Now if we make our tail plane fit the flat bit of the fuselage that we've made here, that will make it 140 millimeters wide. So I'll just change that to 140. When we divide 150,000 by 140, it gives us 267 millimeters. So 23 millimeters off 300. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to thin it down and change it, I'm going to make it 300 millimeters long, the entire tail plane, which means that one side of it will be 150. So I'm going to set that to 150. And that's what we're going to start playing with as just half of our tail plane. So what I'm going to do, convert to a path, and then we can go to nodes and we can start to alter our tail plane. Now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it so it looks about right, so it looks nice. I'm going to insert a node there, and then I'm going to select this node and press D to delete that node. Then I'm going to come down to our radius tool, set a radius of 30, and I'm just going to put a radius there and a radius there. Okay, and that's going to be the basic shape to start with. Now our elevator wants to be around about 25% of the tail plane or of the horizontal stabilizer. So 25%, if I just go by this being 140 and have 25% of that, ignoring the fact that we've slimmed down here, that will give me a 35 millimeters wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a shape, and it's going to be 35 wide. We don't need to do that. All we need to do is go straight onto there like this, line up that back edge more or less, and then maybe just pull that out a little bit there. And then all we're going to do is I'm going to copy that, produce another, and all I'm going to do now is, using the snipping tool, I'm going to create our two components here. And it's as simple as that. Where this is going to sit on the fuselage, what I want to do first is we'll just shape this front end a little bit, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to nodes, I'm going to insert a node here, and I just want to straighten that so that we've now got a straight bit which will sit up against our edge, our stop, when we finally build the fuselage. And at the back here, what I want to do here is I want to make a little bridge there. Now this needs to be 5 millimeters wide, which it is. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to have a strip of carbon coming across here connecting both sides of the elevator, and that strip of carbon that I've got is 5 millimeters wide. So all I'm going to do is bring this shape up, and I'm going to sit it right there, and that goes outside of the shape of the fuselage. Probably doesn't need to be quite that big, but there you go, that will do that. And then I'm going to go back to nodes, I'm going to insert a node, and then insert a node there. I'm going to insert a node here, insert a node here, and then I'm going to delete that node by highlighting it and then pressing D, and then we get the shape of our elevator forming there. So what I've got now is I've got the overall shape of our tail plane or our horizontal stabilizer, along with the shape of our elevator. So if I just separate these two, if I copy this and then produce another and then flip that, I can then bring these together So control, copy, control, and then I flip this one, and in exactly the same way I can join those together. And they're now welded together. Okay, just like that. And so what we've got now is the basic shape of our tailplane, and if we just have a little look, we can place that straight on there, and it looks reasonably sensible in the overall size and shape of that aeroplane. So quite happy with that, and from this now we can start building or shaping the components that are going to make up this tailplane. Okay, so next we're going to make the components that will make up the main tailplane. The elevator will be one piece of 1/8 balsa or 3.2mm balsa. So if we go to our offset tool, and I've set this for 15mm inward, so we've now got this 15mm shape all the way around the outside. So then all I'm going to do, what I want to do is make a line, and then I'm going to go to nodes, go over that line and press A, which will mean it's dead level, and then all I'm going to do is center that line by just bring it over, and as soon as it's centered it shows you this. Can you see the crosshairs there with the little circle? That means you're now dead center. The other way to do it is highlight everything and press this center button up here, that one there, and that would also center your line. But okay, that's where we are. So next, using the line tool, just extend this back straight up like that, because this is just going to be a piece of 15mm by 1/8 balsa. Okay, so our components will be from this corner here. We need to make sure that we can align everything with the grain on the balsa. So all I'm going to do is, using the line tool, from there I'm going to come across to there. So that will be one piece, and then if we come to here, from that corner point there, and just bring it in to a point there on the back trailing, or the trailing edge, what will be prior to the elevator, the back edge of the tailplane, and then do the same over there, and just check we are right on that corner there and right on that corner. Okay, so with that done, we can now start snipping away, and to be fair, we're not really going to need the center line now. I was there just to help me as a guide with this back edge here, so that I could check that they were the correct distance away from each other. And that's really the components. So if I'll just copy this one and put it down here as well, and the way I'll do that is I will go to our line tool, I'll just change the layer so that we can see what we're doing. It'll have a slightly different colour, and then all I'm going to do is go from there and follow around Okay, now if we go to nodes and I will insert a node there just by hovering over it and pressing I, and then I'll just drag that, and that will give me a smooth curved node there. By just dragging the line, that's a quicker and easier way of creating that curve, because it puts a curve sort of side to the corner nodes that you've already got, and it's just a quicker way than the way that we've been doing previously, where we've been using the smooth curved nodes. So you just grab the line and drag it, and you can see that that's now perfectly sat on there. So that's one of our components. So all I do with that is just bring that away, and I'm going to change the layer so that it becomes a cut-in layer. I will now copy and create one for the other side, which I will flip, reduce the height of our letters to 4mm, and we'll call that T1, and this can be T1, and you can see that that one will fit. Just group those. And you can see now that this one will fit straight in there. I'll just label that up as well as T1. Okay, so if we come over to our cutting area or our planning area, bearing in mind that this will be 1/8 balsa, all we want to do there is create another copy of that. So Control C, Control V. I've now got two of those, and I'll just make the other components up now. Just snip that little bit out there. Okay, so these parts here I want to make in exactly the same way. Okay, then we'll go to nodes, and all I'll do is then drag that and grab it and bring it in, as we did with the other one, and that will be T2. I will group, and I'll just drag it over here to where I've got the other components, and Control copy, Control V. We've now got two of those as well. So if I come back to the, and I name that up to the tail, and I name that up T2. T2. And then just create this last piece. Exactly the same way. And we can call that T3. And we only need one of those. So I'll just label up T3 on the plan. In fact, before I group it, let me just change the layer to to our engraving layer, and I'll need to do that with the other components that I've just created as well. Group that, and that is the main components now for the tail plane created. The next thing to do is I've put a 3.6mm spar right across the wing, and the reason for that is I'm going to mount our wing ribs or formers onto that spar. All I'm going to do is create a shape just like that, convert it to a path. So right click, convert to path, and then I'm going to select nodes, and we're going to start shaping this now. So if I insert a node around 2/3 of the way along, and then just bring that up, convert it to a smooth curve node, just like we did earlier with the main wing. And then all I'm going to do is reduce this side down, and I'm going to reduce this end down as well. Now on the last former we had a bird's mouth at the front which sat into the leading edge, but this is going to sit on top of our 1/8 balsa frame. So all I want to do is make a little shape 3.2mm high, so 3.2, and it doesn't really matter how long it is at the moment, and I'll show you why. Because with this particular spar, this one is going to sit right into this corner right there, coming across and then sitting on the trailing edge here. So I'm going to move that until it comes in there and just reaches that corner, that point there. So if we then just raise the bottom of our former here until it touches that corner. So if we return to nodes, back to nodes, I can bring this top down now till it touches our shape, and then I can insert a node there, and then bring this node to that corner there, and we've now got our shape at the front. And this will come down and just stop just short of the front of the leading edge of this. So bringing this shape now to the back, I can do exactly the same. Put that shape so that it touches the bottom of the former or the rib, and I can now come back to nodes and do exactly the same again. Insert a node here, and then move this node to that corner there. Can convert this to 3.2, a 3.2 square, and I can just place that straight on top of our new rib, just there. And then if I just bring those away from there so I don't snip the wrong bits. And then all I want to do here is, if I select that and just bring it across the line, I can get the snipping tool, snip that, and we've now got the shape of our central rib there. This looks a little, doesn't look very uniform there, so I'll just go back to nodes and we'll have a little look at that, what's happened there. There, that might be a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to call that R1. Control copy, because we'll need 2 of those. So there's 2. I've got a third because I'm going to use that to make the shape of the rest of the wing. But what I'll do with those two first, I'll just shift them across to where our 3.2mm components are, and I'll be putting these all onto a planning sheet in a little while. With regards to the tail itself, I need to start marking up where these ribs are going to sit for our main plan. So if I make that 3.2mm high, and I'll make the length identical to this, so that is 87.12. So if I make our thing 87.12, then that's exactly the same. So all I need to do is put one of those there, and put one there as well. So I'll just put that in exactly the same place, and I can just check that positioning by overlaying the rib, line that up on the central spar, and just make sure that these ends are in line and they look fairly close to me, or they look spot on to me. Okay, so I think what we need to do is work out how many ribs we need, and then set our distances for them. I'll just create a straight line, make sure that we are vertical by selecting nodes, clicking A. All I need to do with that is bring it across and use that to line up our ribs at this end. Now our distance from here to here is 102, so I'm going to make a line. I'm going to make sure it's upright by pressing A when the nodes are on and hovering over, and then I'm going to make the length of that 34mm, 34, and I'm going to use that as a measuring stick. So from the front of one to the front of the next, just like that, just to position those on the plan really, rather than the just to make sure they're right on the plan. Okay, and they were all pretty close, just one needed moving. Now what I want to do is align this rear end just here to make sure that that's in exactly the right place. Okay, and then I need to do exactly the same down here. So what I'll do is I will set our distances in just the same way. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this now is just use this to align the front of our formers or ribs. Now all I've done here is just made it parallel to the front leading edge, and now all I'm going to do now is take it back until it touches the front of this rib, and then all I need to do from there is just take these ribs in just like that. and this will help us when we get our plan printed and we start to use it and we actually build from it. It will also help us to, as we're making the new ribs, it'll help us to set the point where the cut-in for the spar is on the ribs. So if I just flip this over, I can now bring it down and do exactly the same on this side. And the reason for doing all this is because at the end of the whole process, I want to end up with a proper full-size plan as well, all written up, and you know, one that can actually be used. So this rib here is going to be R1, and then I'll come down here and put R1, and then R2, R3 and R4. Okay, so having done that, I can now remove our straight edges that we've used. Just get them out of the way for now. And all I want to do is bring that and put it straight on where R2 is. And what I want to do is, using this corner function here, I want to bring the size down so everything shrinks accordingly. And you can see how the back edge there has stayed on where it's supposed to be, and this edge now, I just want this top corner here to be touching that line, whilst this top corner here is touching that line. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to get this point here where it's supposed to be, and this point here where it's supposed to be, and they both are. And then if I go to nodes, I can then make some small adjustments here. If I select all four of these and then move them across, they'll all move across together, and I won't have the problem of keeping them all in the right configuration. Now, because we've shrunk the whole thing, this is no longer a 3.32 millimeters. So what I need to do is take these two nodes here, and I'm just going to take those across a little bit. Okay, so having done that, I'm going to now just bring this over, and using a 3.2 millimeter square, I'm just going to make sure that we've still got the right height. If I line that up with the sides, just like that, and then take it up so that this bottom line is level with our bottom line here, I can see that we've actually shrunk the top as well. So if I go back to nodes, what I can do is just bring that up to the top corner like that, bring that up to the top corner. I now know that that is spot on. So if I control copy, control V, make a copy, and I call that R2. make sure that that is the correct layer, engraving layer, group. Then I can take that over to where we're just storing these for now. Control copy, Control V, and I've now got R1s and R2s done. So all I've got to do now is exactly that same process to produce R3 and R4, and I'll show you them when they're finished. So I've arranged these components over here, and I've now put the tail plane on the plan where I want it to finally sit. So the next thing to do is for us to make our vertical stabilizer, or the fin and the rudder. So I'm going to make that the same size. It's going to sit straight on top here of the tail plane, and if we come in a little bit closer, you can see that over the top of these two ribs there's going to be a piece of 1/16 balsa, or 1.6mm balsa, in order to support the stabilizer. So we'll have a little bit of a look at that when we're forming the bottom of the stabilizer. But in essence, we're going to be 140mm long, so it's going to be the same size as the tail plane. And come off there, we'll convert that to a path. Convert to a path, and we will just go to nodes. Okay, so I'm thinking something like that might be reasonable. And then if we go to our radius tool, make that radius a little bit bigger than that, I think maybe go to 30 on our radius, the radius there at the front, and then maybe the same at the back. And I think that looks quite sensible, quite reasonable. The actual rudder now, I want that to be the same size or the same width as this elevator here. So if I just create a square, or just create a shape, and I make that width 37, and then all we need to do is what we did earlier. We bring our elevator shape in, copy everything, Control C, and we'll just shift over to this side a bit and do Control V, and then with our snipping tool we can now snip that away so that we've got the fin, and then if we snip those away, and then let's just have a little look here. I want to get rid of that one too. And then we've got this shape here of the rudder itself. Now if we go to nodes and we insert a node here, so all we do is hover over the line and press I, that inserts the node, and then if we select this node and then press D, that will give us the shape of our rudder. And this angle here will give us clearance should we be using the elevator at any time when we're when the rudder's turned, and that will look more or less like that when it's sat on top of the wing. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to just draw out the pattern of what this is going to look like on the inside. So if I select that and I bring our offset tool, and we're coming in 15mm again, just like that, and then all I want in there is some just a cross of balsa, so it'll be 3.2mm, 3.2 millimeters, and that will sit straight in the middle there, just like that. Now our components, again, I want to go exactly with the grain. So this back piece here will be a straight, I want to go with the grain of the balsa. So that'll just be a straight piece of 15 millimeters cut balsa, and then this top piece here will be aligned to go with the grain, and there will be the parts of the fin stabilizer and the rudders at the back there. Now I've just thought, what I think I'll do here is I will embed that into these pieces. I think just place it there and then use our snipping tool to just snip out those parts there. There we go. So now we'll be in a position where we can put our piece of material straight in, our piece of balsa straight in, and it will fit nicely into those parts or those slots in the tail. Okay, so next I want one coming across. So exactly the same thing, and that will just be in the center, just like that, and I'll let it into those parts just in the same way. So with that in mind, I'll just go to the snipping tool and I will snip that out, snip this and this out, and then I will snip that out. And there we go. That will be what the fin looks like. So the next thing to do, or the last thing to do with this, is for me to actually cut these shapes out. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select the line tool. I'm going to click on a layer there, layer 2, just so that it's a different colour so we can see what I'm doing. And all I want to do is come across to there, and then to there, to there, there, and just follow the pattern around. We'll make these a little more precise in just a minute. Okay, so we just go to nodes, we select our thing. Now remember, all we need to do now is grab this line and pull it out until it's absolutely bang on where we want it to be. So very straightforward. Or you can convert these to smooth curve nodes, and we can do our adjustments that way. Okay, so a little bit of tweaking to do here. Okay, so I think that's that component finished, and we'll call that F1, I think. Just group that. So just group that, and that's F1 finished. Okay, so that's F1 complete. Next, what I want to do is produce the shape of F3 and the edge of F2, which is going to sit straight on the tail plane. So what I've done here is I've got a copy of R1, which is this central rib over here, and then there's a sheet of 1/16 balsa or 1.6mm balsa sitting on top of that, going from the front to the back of the tail plane. And you can see that what I've done here is I've added, using nodes, I've just added a piece, and I've measured that with the measuring tool, and that is 1.6mm. If you zoom right in, you can do that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to place that under the tail, just like that, and then I'm going to go on nodes. I'm going to use nodes to adjust the shape of this bottom piece here and the shape of this piece up the side here, and I'm going to shape that so that it fits perfectly. Okay, so there we have nodes on this outline. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add nodes in. So if I add a node right there by hovering over, press I, and then I'll add a node right here by hovering over and pressing I. And then all I want to do with these is I'm going to bring that down until it touches our shape there. Bring that one down, and then at this end I'm going to do exactly the same. So bring that down and that, and then I'm going to insert another node here, and I'm going to bring that to there, and then do exactly the same over here. Insert and bring that to that corner there. And when we come to put this together, there will be an element of we will be sanding and just making this fit, making this fit precisely. So next, if I come to about here, insert a node, and I'll insert another there, and I'll insert another there, and I'll convert those to smooth curve nodes by clicking on, pressing S, clicking on and pressing S, and then clicking on and pressing S. And all I'm going to do now is just lift these into place, and then we will just play with the little tabs that sit on them to get that into a nice smooth curve. You can see how that's now more or less following. If you just grab this bit here and just lift the, just lift. There we go. And we can just tease these now and keep working with them until, see, that bit there is actually perfect, and then this one here just needs a little, there we go, and I think that will be a good fit. Okay, so we've shaped the bottom of our tail now so that it will fit straight onto the tail plane. Now what I want to do, this little bit here, I just want to make sure that I've got enough clearance here, because that's 1.6mm. So if I click on the tail, and all I'm going to do is insert a node there, and then insert a node there, and then if I click on that node and press D, we'll just take that away from any risk of snagging when we assemble this. Okay, so if I move our R1 with the added bits on, with the leading edge, the trailing edge, and the 16th, we can now see we've now got a nice shape for our rudder and our vertical stabilizer that will fit perfectly onto our tail plane. Okay, so in the same way as we did F1, Here what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy F2, F3 and F4 just by using the line tool and then following round, and again I'll just point out that I use a different layer so that we can see, you know, we've got an idea what we're doing. And there we go. So that's F2 shaped. Now I'll just do the same with, I'll bring that over, label it up, I'll change it to a cutting layer and I'll have the label as the engraving layer. I'll do the same with F3 and F4 and I'll show you those in just 1 minute. Okay, so that's all the components are made up now and they're sat there, and I've got the vertical stabilizer completed, all shaped, and I've put that over to this side so that I can organise these into cutting plans depending on what they are. If I just open some of the others, I can show you some of the cutting plans that we've already got. This is for the main wing, the main plane, and all the components there with the ailerons already set out. So I've also got, I'll just open up the main plan. I've called it plan file, and what I've done with this is I've organised everything onto a single sheet, and one A0 sheet will fit this. I've labelled it up and we've called the aeroplane Dixie. And so what I'm going to do is I've already sent this off to the printer, and when that comes back I'll have a full plan file and we will build the aircraft on a paper plan. In the next video I'm going to send all the components to the laser and you'll see those being cut out. So thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.